Hello there, everybody. Welcome back to the Roderick Geo channel. Today, we're going to be looking at something a little bit different. So, as you know, I go through recommended videos on the daily, basically, to check out and see if there's anything new and interesting. And this channel popped up, Grayson Arabia, to prefer to die on one's feet than live on one's knees. Anyways, yeah, it's a smaller channel. It looks like he goes around the world potentially. He talks about some geopolitical things. So yeah, travel channel, geopolitical channel, interesting little channel. Anyways, what's drew me to this are these two videos in particular. This is Killing Canada, and Canada is being colonized. And of course, you see the Indian flag on this one, and on the colonized one, you see the Indian and Chinese flag. So I don't know. I just I see this video with "This is Killing Canada," immigration, Indian flag, Justin Trudeau, and this is the video that actually popped up in my recommendations. So I figured, hey, why not? Let's go ahead and give this channel a watch. Give these two videos a watch and see what Grayson Arabia here has to say about what's going on in Canada. Because I mean, the only Canadian videos that I can think of that we've done on this channel, because I mean, yeah, of course, the channel's kind of started to focus more on Indian stuff, Indian geopolitics, Indian geography, whatnot, and of course, we have the whole Palestine movement over in India, and it's very big in Canada as well. So, what was the guy's name? Hardeep Singh. So yeah, it's that's the only correlation I have currently with Canada, but I am interested to hear what Grayson here has to say. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and give it a watch. Mass immigration is probably what he's going to say here. In this video, I'll explain why mass immigration is killing Canada and why it will continue to get worse. Mass immigration is killing Canada. Interesting. Very, very, very interesting.
Mass immigration is destroying Canada, but not in the way you might think. It is obvious that high immigration has contributed to the housing crisis we have in Canada. However, mass immigration is not just leading to a housing crisis and making Canada more expensive for Canadians. It's going to make Canada more dangerous, and it's going to destroy the social fabric of our society.
More dangerous and destroy the social fabric of society. So, I interesting. I hear this rhetoric quite a bit in the U.S. I'm from the U.S., of course, and you hear this a lot, saying, "Oh, the immigrants coming from, Mexico, Venezuela, stuff like that, or like gang members and whatnot." I wonder if he's like trying to insinuate something along that line.
Before I explain to you why this is the case, we need to ask ourselves, why do people come to Canada in the first place? And for me, this mainly boils down to two different groups of people. People that want a better life and people that want to come here and make more money. When I say someone wants a better life, I'm using this as a holistic term to describe all refugees, asylum seekers, and basically anyone fleeing poverty or any other type of danger in their home country. And when I say people want to make money, I'm simply referring to economic migrants. When we quickly break down Canada's immigration,
for the year 2022, Canada welcomed 437,000 immigrants and saw a net increase in the number of non-permanent residents estimated at 607,000. The thing is, though, man, why would you want to go to Canada? It's so cold. I say as, the biggest city in Canada is actually deeper into the U.S. than, even some of the states, so...
Immigrant population, only about 1/3 of people that came to Canada in 2022 were refugees, which means most of the people coming into Canada are economic migrants. And the reality is, people coming to Canada, for whatever reason, are inevitably going to have less respect for our culture, and or they're going to have a very difficult time assimilating to our culture.
Okay, so why assume that? Why assume they would have less respect? Okay, maybe he explains.
The "and or" here is very important because I do think there's going to be a lot of economic migrants and refugees that come here that do have some appreciation for Canadians and Canadian culture for allowing them to come here. However, I do think a lot of refugees and asylum seekers have a very hard time assimilating because often they're not going to
Okay, what is this? About 20% of the government assisted Syrian refugees knew English or French, compared with 67% of privately sponsored refugees. Less than 3% of the government assisted Syrian refugees had a university degree, compared to with 25% of those who were privately sponsored. So, according to this document here, in regards to Syrian refugees in 2016, it looks like 2015 to 2016, only 20% of them actually knew English or French, so they couldn't speak the language, right? At the time of the 2016 census, 33% of the Syrian refugees were living in Montreal and Toronto census metropolitan area. In comparison, 29% other countries. Okay. 24% of the male refugees from Syria were employed, compared with 39% among those from other countries. Among Syrian female refugees, 8% were employed, compared to with 17% of female refugees from other countries. Wait, they came in and only 24% of them were employed? Crazy.
Speak English to a high degree, and two, they're coming from countries that have very different value systems than the one we have here in Canada. And then
True. Oh, okay, so he's looking at it from like an Islamic front, right? Muslim front. As you know, there are more strict rules when it comes to Muslims, and definitely in regards to like women in general, right?
we have the rest of the economic migrants. Now again, this isn't a blanket statement because obviously some economic migrants are going to respect our culture and appreciate Canada for allowing them to come here and work, but it's ridiculous for us to assume that even a majority of them are going to
Here's the Pakistani flag. What's going on here?
respect our culture and society when they're coming here solely to make money.
Celebration Indian Independence Day in Canada.
And this isn't even the first choice for a lot of them. For a lot of people coming here right now, they want to get into the US or other countries, but because it's very difficult for them to get into those countries, they decide to come here instead. We're going to talk about
Interesting. Okay, so you're saying, he's saying that a lot of economic people that want to work are using Canada as a stop off. Okay.
this a bit more in depth later, but first, let's look at some of the safest countries in the world. There is always going to be a difference in ranking depending on which variables are considered, but for the most part, 3 of the top 10 countries:
Iceland, Denmark, Ireland, New Zealand. I was going to say New Zealand's probably like the safest, right? Austria, Singapore, Portugal, Slovenia, Japan, Switzerland, Canada, Czechia, and Finland. Singapore, huh? Interesting. Doesn't Singapore have like super strict laws, especially on silly things like free speech? There's like no free speech laws or something.
Are always Iceland, Denmark, and Japan. And one of the similarities between these 3 countries is that they're all fairly homogenous.
Or ethno states, is that the correct term? Ethno states. He's using homogenous.
Japan has an immigrant population of less than 3%, Denmark is less than 8%, and Iceland is a bit higher, around 12%. But when you consider Iceland has a population of like 400,000 people,
I was gonna say Iceland. I don't know. I don't know if I'd personally want to live in Iceland. Again, too cold. Too cold.
Makes sense that this percentage is going to be higher, even though the raw number is going to be quite small. Also, most of the immigrants going to Iceland are from other European countries and not from the Middle East or Asia. Now, obviously, there's a lot of factors that contribute to the safety and social cohesion of a society, but it is very obvious that shared language, values, and religion play a big role in this. After all, it doesn't take a genius.
Palestinian militants fire more rocket as Israel airstrikes hit Gaza.
To see what can happen when you have
Rohingya youth slain in Bangladesh, 4th murder this month. Dang.
Groups of people that don't share these things.
South Africa's Black Party sings "Kill the Boer," parentheses whites, kill the white farmer. Oh my god, okay.
Living in close proximity with one another. And out of the 3 countries that I talked about, I find Denmark to be the most interesting. During the middle of the 2010s, mainly from 2013 to 2016, Denmark had a massive increase in refugees coming to the country. What Denmark realized is that this massive increase in immigration was leading to problems with social cohesion. Since then, with support from both sides of the political spectrum, Denmark has drastically cut immigration, making it incredibly difficult to get refugee status and claim asylum. Not only that, Denmark is...
The new policy, agreed with major opposition parties, will force young children living in ghettos, an official term for areas consisting of primarily non-Western immigrants, into 24 hours of public education a week from age of 1. It will force children into 25 hours of public education a week. Hmm.
Is now forcing immigrant children who live in a neighborhood that has a high population of immigrants to go to Danish school to learn the language and learn the culture every week. And they have to do
Interesting.
this because the Danish government realized in order for these immigrant children to successfully grow up and integrate into the society, they need to have a native level grasp of the language and they need to learn about the cultures and values that Denmark has. And this is something the Danish government thinks is necessary because in these neighborhoods where these children live, since there are so many other immigrants, the Danish government doesn't believe these children are going to be exposed to these morals, values, and obviously the language to a high enough degree.
What are they assuming if they don't force the people into schooling that they'd become essentially like enclaves of whatever country they came from, essentially, like small little micro states?
Essentially, Denmark has deemed the assimilation of immigrants, at least to some degree, crucial for social order. And another thing working in the favor of countries like Japan and Denmark is that since it is now so difficult to immigrate there, the people that successfully get their visas and get to go there more than often want to be there for more than just economic reasons. This is what we would
Hmm.
call
Intrinsic motivation is defined as the motivation to engage in a behavior because of the inherent satisfaction of the activity rather than the desire for a reward or specific outcome. According to the Introduction to Psychology, Gateway to the Minds and Behavior with Concept Maps, intrinsic motivation occurs when we act without any obvious external rewards. We simply enjoy an activity or see it as an opportunity to explore, learn, and actualize our potentials. Dude, that's why I started doing these reaction content and geoguessing content because I just wanted to learn more. The three main elements of intrinsic motivation are autonomy, purpose, and mastery. People are intrinsically motivated when they can act independently, feel that their efforts matter, and gain satisfaction from becoming more skilled. Dude, that's me. That's me to a T.
intrinsic motivation compared to the extrinsic motivation of
Some examples of extrinsic motivation include a person may wish to complete tasks to acquire stickers, toys, money, or approval from others. Punishment. Examples include timeouts, loss of certain privileges or suspensions from school or work. A person may want to perform better than their peers when it comes to school grades. Tips, company perks, and pay raises. Yeah, you never want to work for extrinsic reasons, right? Typically, it leads to just being upset at what you're doing.
just wanting to make a ton of money. And by default, someone with intrinsic motivation is going to be more likely to learn the language and assimilate to the culture. But unfortunately, that's not the reality for Canada. Like I said before, most people coming to Canada are economic migrants and they're coming here just to make money. Now, I'll say here, I have zero issue with people relocating to Canada. We are unbelievably blessed to have been born and raised in Canada where bombs weren't being dropped on us, where there was equal rights for everyone under the law, where we have clean air and the country is relatively safe.
Is that really the color of this water here? This vibrant, like, I don't know, whatever this blue color is. That doesn't seem
That
real.
said, just because I don't fault people for coming here to pursue a better life doesn't mean I'm going to give people a pass for coming here, refusing to adopt our culture and values, and hold on to things from their old country that don't align with what we do here. Now, previously, this wasn't a huge concern when we had less people coming in, but now that the immigrant population
Immigration accounts for almost 100% of Canada's labor force growth. Roughly 75% of Canada's public growth comes from immigration, mostly in economic category. By 2036, immigrants will represent up to 30% of Canada's population compared to 20.7% in 2011. Wow.
is over 20%, with the government
25% parentheses.
wanting it to reach 30% within the next decade, this is becoming a larger issue. In the past, society was a bit easier at policing itself and, in a sense, keeping people in line. And what I mean by this is, in the past, if you saw someone doing something inappropriate or wrong, you would speak up and say something about it, which is something that a lot of people don't do now. And just like there is in a lot of other parts of the world,
what's Norway doing?
including places like Denmark and Japan, there used to be a pressure for people to actually act appropriately out in public. And the larger problem now is that in a lot of cities like Brampton and Toronto, since a lot of neighborhoods have such a high population of immigrants, things that would have been checked
Khalistani dogs tried to disturb Diwali celebration by Indians in Canada. Never mess with Indians in Canada.
20, 30 years ago by other Canadians are going unchecked and accepted because there's so many other
Oh
people
my
who
God.
share that
What
similar
the heck is going on, man?
culture and value because they come from the same country. Now, I'm not trying to say that Canadian culture or Western culture in general is the best, because obviously it's not. What I'm simply saying is we're currently in Canada. We are not in India. We are not in China. We are not even in Europe or South America. If you are coming here, you should be willing to adopt the cultures and values that Canadians have. Now,
You know, I do agree to that to an extent, right? Like if you are planning on going to a country and living in that country, you should at least respect the people that are already living there, right? You don't want to you shouldn't expect to go there and just completely disrupt the way of life and just keep doing what you're doing where you lived prior. Not saying that where you lived prior could be bad. It could be good. Maybe you're moving to a country where I don't know, things are a little bit more open. You should be able to respect that without trying to change the people, right? I don't know. It is a tough little thing to wrap your brain around, right? It's a tough little topic. Um, this guy is very dead set on saying, hey, when you come to Canada, become a Canadian. Don't bring your previous values here.
America. If you are coming here, you should be willing to adopt the cultures and values that Canadians have. Now, some people might try and argue against this and point to the fact that Canada's always had a high number of immigrants, and that's true. However, we're now reaching a point where the immigration level is so high, we've never actually seen these numbers before, and that's only going to continue to climb as time progresses. But more importantly, the immigrants coming to Canada now are vastly different from the immigrants of the past. For those of you not aware, the top 5 countries for immigration to Canada now are 1, India, 2,
118,000 Indian immigrants, 27% of the immigrants. China, 31,000. Afghanistan, 23,000. Nigeria, 22,000. Philippines, 22,000.
China, 3, Afghanistan, 4, Nigeria, and 5, the Philippines. You're gonna have a very hard time finding things that the average Canadian, Chinese, Indian, Nigerian, Afghani, and Filipino agree on. For the most part, we don't share the same language, we don't eat the same food, we don't have the same religion, and we don't share the same cultural values. Now contrast this to decades back,
Okay.
where most of Canadians
I mean, he does kind of have somewhat of a point.
Canadians' immigration population was coming from places like the UK and Western Europe. In those times, although the immigration rate was still quite high, it was easier for these people to assimilate to our society because there was either an overlap in language, which we had with Britain, there was an overlap in religion, mainly Christianity, or there was overlap in values between Western Europe and Canada. And obviously, this is something we don't have today because a lot of people are coming from countries that aren't Western Europe and the UK. Also back then, there was a much higher rate of nationalism among the public, meaning that there was more pride in your country and, in a sense, more pressure to conform
Poppies must be a Canadian thing. I don't know.
To the culture and values of that country. And I'm not saying everything's better now, because in a lot of ways, things have improved for immigrants coming to Canada, and the reality is they needed to. But the problem is, we can't even have a conversation about this anymore because it's considered racist and xenophobic. And I want to make this point very clear.
Hold on. Why is it considered racist and xenophobic? You're just talking about different cultures.
Clear. This doesn't just apply to immigrants coming to Canada. This also applies to Canadians leaving for other countries.
Yeah,
We've seen tons of
I'm done with Canada. High cost of living leads some to leave the country.
Canadians, especially in response to COVID, leave for places like Mexico, Asia, and other parts of Europe. And if you want to leave, all the power to you. That said, if you're not willing to adopt the culture and values of the country you want to move to, don't move there.
Hey, that's what I said. You gotta, if you're moving to a place, you gotta be willing to try to at least assimilate yourself a little bit, right? And I guess that's his whole argument as well. I thought this was going to be a lot more negative, but honestly, it's not really. It's like he's not like specifically saying a negative thing based off the traits of the people, other than calling out like the Islamic stuff with less parity for gender equality. But other than that, no, he's not like specifically going out of his way to say, hey, these people are bad. These people are coming to Canada are bad, and this is why they're bad. He's not saying that. He's saying, hey, these people that are coming to Canada, they're not trying to be Canadian, and that's what's bad. Okay. All right, Grayson. All right, Grayson. I get you. I get you. The definitely clickbait title, which is YouTube, right?
Want to
But
live in
okay.
Mexico? Learn Spanish. Want to live in Costa Rica? Don't expect people to show up on time. Want to live in Japan?
Whoa, what does that mean? Whoa, whoa, whoa! What do you mean by that, buddy? What do you mean by that, huh?
You better learn your kanji and you better put a mask on. To me, it's just a massive middle finger to the people of the country you're moving to if you're not planning to learn their language, culture, and values. But again, let's remind ourselves what's happening in Canada is not the fault of any individual person because there are hundreds of thousands of good immigrants that come here. They respect our culture, they contribute positively. A lot of them are doctors and physicians and business owners that employ people. So a lot of them contribute in ways that I definitely can't contribute, and we need to appreciate those people because they're very important to our society. And even though there are a lot of people that come here just to make money and they could care less about Canada and the people here, we can't blame those people for coming. If there's anyone to blame, we need to blame Justin Trudeau and the Liberal government of Canada. After all, they're the ones making these policies. I guess we could also mention that the NDP at this point is also semi-responsible for this, since their votes are essentially propping up the Liberal government and keeping them in office until 2025. And unfortunately, if the current immigration system continues, which it will, it's going to degenerate into something that most Canadians can't even recognize, let alone want to participate in. What can we do about this? Well, for starters, I think we actually need to acknowledge that we have a problem here. However, I don't think this is going to happen for 3 reasons. 1, there are a lot of people in Canada that still don't believe we have a problem with our immigration system. 2, none of the politicians are going to touch this because it's political suicide. And 3, the Canadians that actually agree on this position or think that we need less immigration are afraid to speak out, mainly because we live in a woke society where if you say the wrong thing and the wrong person sees it, you could be out of a job. But again, this is just my opinion.
Woke. Everything's woke. We live in a woke society. Actually, I think the PC woke culture is on the decline. If you look at a lot of the trends in social media and pop culture, late 2010s, early 2020s, very woke, very PC. But the last couple years, there's been a significant decline in the positive reception of quote unquote wokeness and PC culture. Um, I mean, just go online, right? Go to Twitter or X, whatever. Go to places like, well, you won't see Reddit because Reddit is the moderation team on Reddit is ridiculous. Don't go on Reddit. But you go on to other forum sites, go onto YouTube, and you can definitely see a significant increase in anti woke rhetoric all over the place. And people tend to be okay with that. Actually, I was reading a study. Don't quote me on this. I don't know the source. I can't remember the source, but I was reading a study where a lot of the younger Gen Z men in particular are incredibly like anti wokeness. So interesting.
Opinion on the issue. If you have a different opinion or you want to share your thoughts, comment sections down below. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really appreciate it if you could leave a like on the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with a friend. And with
Interesting.
that said, thanks for watching. Stay safe wherever you are in the world. I'll catch you in the next one.
Okay, I definitely want to see what he has to say about the in the other video as well. But first things first, we will take a look at the comment section. Also, if you want to check out the channel, check out the videos, it's as a reactor. I always link every single video that I react to in the comment or in the description box down below. Also, out of courtesy, I do subscribe to every channel that I react to. So, yeah, make sure to take a look at that if you want to go and check out the channel. But now we're going to read some comments, and then we're going to jump into the next video. I'm not sure how many people will see this video, but I feel obliged to remind anyone who wants to comment to be civil. The video was not created to stoke hate against any particular person or group. If you want to support the channel, the easiest way to do it is by liking the video, subscribing, and checking out the affiliate link in the description. Interesting. Bashing immigrants in Canada, but living in Colombia, dumb, entitled, racist in disguise. You haven't assimilated Colombian culture. Go home. Value systems have nothing to do with race. Canada doesn't need 30% of the population being okay. All right, hold on. All right. There seems to be a lot of missing comments there. So I could go through 148 chain reply, or we can just read some of the other comments, top comments. How is this a top comment? What? It was set to newest first. Let's read top comment. Top comments, and then we'll switch to the newest comments. The problem is USA has accepted best of the lot from India, and Canada is the worst. So this guy is saying that the USA is accepting the better immigrants, however you can quantify better immigrants, and Canada is accepting the worst immigrants. Because of the low barrier to entry, I also wish to move there through the investment visa, but the undeserving clowns who have reached there by the way of asylum seeking and on the backs of their families have ruined the reputation of our country, and the rest will get targeted for it. That Khalistani nationalism is an issue in Canada shows there's been problems with the assimilation process. Imagine if an American moved to France and then tried to make Texan succession a major issue. That's that's exactly actually that is actually the Khalistani movement in a nutshell, isn't it? There's this big push to make Khalistan its own state in India, or its own country, separate from India and Pakistan. Share something objective and meaningful about adorable Canada. Send Pinder Binder packing. I don't know. I don't know what that means. Which is what De Gaulle tried to do. Guess what? Pierre Trudeau gave him the boot. Why? I don't know. The comments are weird. I was having the same conversation with my barber. He was a Syrian refugee who arrived in 2016. He opened his own shop by renting a vacant store and started off from scratch. It was a slow start, but through hard work, he was large enough and a large enough clientele that he has hired another barber, and you now have to call to make an appointment rather than just drop in. He is making mortgage payments on a humble house, and he has his two boys enrolled in French immersion school. He was telling me that his kids are way more fluent in English and French than Arabic, which he said was a good thing. He then told me that he knows what other Syrians who arrived with him are still living in the same hotel they were put up when they arrived, collecting welfare and having made absolutely no effort to learn any English or French since they've been there. He seemed rather disappointed in his fellow countrymen. I have absolutely no problem welcoming immigrants like my barber, as he contributes more than he took. The others, not so much. 2016, at the time of this comment here, would have been 8 years ago. So he's saying, according to his barber, the people that came with him are still in the same hotel that they arrived at and getting welfare. Unchecked immigration is the problem. Many individuals with questionable background from India came to Canada. Some gained access by playing human rights card. Multiple warnings from the Indian government to the Canadian authorities have gone unanswered. Perhaps Canada believed they were valuable assets in the broader geopolitical game. One thing to note that an overwhelming majority of immigrants from India are from Punjab. There's an obvious immigration racketeering scheme happening there that are getting support probably from Canadian government actors. Canada will create Khalistan. It's actually Gujaratis, Haryanas, who come here illegally. Most Punjabis come in through the proper channels, go on to good Canadians. Dude, it's actually everyone. Punjabis just tend to be the most visible. They should ban those Punjabis. Oh my god. Justin Trudeau is an awful prime minister. This person hearted that comment. As an Indian, totally agree with you. These non-residing Indians used to mortify us by showing these fairy tale image of them living in this la la land, whereas in reality they were living in subhuman conditions with a hope to see another day. I can live much better than them at much lower cost and support my aging parents. Canada is a beautiful country, but its policy makers hate it and have ruined it. Much love to all. Hope y'all bounce back, and I know you will. Canadians now. Oh no, immigrants. Native Americans then. Oh no, invaders. Imagine First Nation feel about mass immigration. I get so upset thinking about what our government has done to our country. It doesn't feel like the place I grew up in. Becoming harder and harder to have open, honest communications about the tough issues. Cancel culture is very threatening. Good thing I don't care about being canceled. I'll go to the grave at least knowing I have my integrity and honesty with me. Too many humans lacking backbones that put profit and economic certainty above pursuit of the truth. Cancel culture is humanity's worst enemy. Fight right back. Never surrender. Be strong. 550 show Kalistani attacking Indians, which is a failure of the Canadian police. Proceed to say Indians need to assimilate. The problem is your leadership and opposition who sees Kalistani as a voting bloc and not a terrorist organization. Your leadership wants them there. Look at how many people Canada has accepted from Punjab. There's a Canadian consulate in Punjab, so Canada can take more people from there. Canadians voted for this. India has forced Canada to expel 41 Canadian diplomats so they can no longer take these people to Canada. Look at 147. People originating from India remain Indians for a white Canadian or American, even if they are born and bred in those countries, but there's not the case of European origin people born there. What? The amount of Indians in Canada is insane, this person says. Mass immigration leads to overall impoverishment of Canada, low social trust and quality of life, overabundant welfare state, and increase in crime. Trudy is killing Canada. Canada's at fault here. Okay. All right. As an Indian, I just want Canada government to stop mass immigration from specific Indian states like Punjab. So okay, hold on. Is there mass immigration like specific like Canada government sponsored mass immigration? Hmm. When Canada and the U.S. were admitting immigrants based on educational qualifications, they got the cream of the crop. Yeah. Now the U.S. is just letting everybody come in from the border, and just I think something like almost a million people have illegally immigrated into the U.S. in the past 2 years from the border. It's wild. Okay. People from Punjab, India, they come there with baggage. Most commit crimes in India, banned escape to Pakistan, and from there they illegally and then seek asylum, claiming India is treating them bad. What about Hindus who are also going to Canada in flocks? Yeah, a lot of people don't even want to talk about immigration for fears of being perceived as racist. The older Canadians see what's going on and are just keeping their mouth shut. Yeah, people need to stop caring about what they labeled and speak their truth. Hmm. Okay. I want to take a look at a couple of the newer comments to see what some of the newer comments have to say, and then we will take a look at the other video as well. Well done, sir. As an immigrant, I dropped all my loyalties to my home nation and I adopted Canadian values. For me, it is Canada first and nothing else. I am more than grateful to have been allowed to become a part of Canadian culture. Bravo. Being an Indian, I totally agree with you. If you immigrate to another country, then you have to follow and respect their culture. The mistake these countries do is give citizenship or PR very easily, and hence they get licenses to do anything and you can't deport them back. The solution never gives citizenship to these immigrants. Instead, renews their visa as they live as a law-abiding citizen. As long as they live. Okay. India is flooded with Bangladeshi and Rohingya immigrants who are destroying our culture and creating security issues. So I feel your pain. Is that true? How is Bangladeshi immigrants destroying Indian culture? Can someone explain in the comments? You should learn from your neighbor USA. Strict control over work visa and stop entertain asylum seekers. A lot of corruption there in your country for allowing asylum seekers to enter. USA, take cream of the world. No, okay, hold on. We are literally, this person doesn't know, I guess, but the USA is literally having an issue with asylum seekers coming in via the border, like just like the mass illegal immigration. So much so that even Joe Biden this past week is going to be forcibly closing the border. Like he's like pushing a bill through or something. Let me pull it up. Yeah, so right here, Biden issues new executive order, much of the southern border to close. So that our immigration problem is so huge, even Joe freaking Biden is closing the border. And you know what? People got mad at Trump wanting to close the border, and here Biden's closing the border. 2,500 crossings a day over a 7-day period. Securing our border. It's wild, man. It's wild. It's wild. It's wild. What is this? It's seriously sickening in Canada now. No chill. All these racist people, especially those Palestinians Trudeau invited to live here, seriously destroyed respect here. They only hire their own kind, speak their own language, and no respect and customer service, period. I don't look at this place the same anymore, and I never spoke about their country pike this till now, keeping it real. I agree with your video, but as someone who has descended from immigrants, to say that their values are backwards or to heavily imply they're backwards is the problem. The problem isn't to do with race, culture, or values. It's largely social, economic. Poor immigrants will always bring problems. There are plenty of lower socioeconomic individuals that don't cause problems. What separates them from others that do cause problems, question mark, values. Could you give me an example? The only one I can think of are East Asians. If so, this would simply mean that East Asian values are superior to all, including Indian or Western values. You missed the point I made in the video. There are people with good and bad values from all walks of life, but more so in certain countries where we are now seeing more immigrants. That said, people with bad values could come from anywhere. However, back in the day, people were forced to lose their values upon entering Canada. We had a much lower level of immigration, and people didn't tolerate improper behavior, be people assimilated. Now we are heading towards 30% of our population being immigrants. People don't need to assimilate since a lot of people they live around share these poor values. This is exact problem Denmark and many other countries face. The answer is assimilation, which could be done through many avenues, but the simplest is controlling the amount of people you let in. Okay. Very well said. As a Chinese immigrant in one of the European countries, I do respect the culture and the values. Now it's time to pick up the language. Come on. Okay. Downvoted by low-fi immigrants from shithole countries, but Trudeau needs their votes. The newcomers from countries like India, Pakistan, etc. have no manners. For example, on the public transit, they put their backpacks, do not let others sit. There's just one example among... Come on, come on. Oh no, they are saving seats on... Everyone does that. That's not people from India or Pakistan. Literally everybody does that. Get out of here. Okay. We're gonna we're gonna look at this video now. Canada is being colonized. It's interesting that it just popped up right here. So yeah, what do you guys think about his take on the immigration issue? About basically, like he said, people are coming in. They in the past they would assimilate and become Canadian, but now people are coming in and they're not becoming Canadian. They're just keeping, they're basically making these microstates. But yeah, like right here with the Nitish Rajput video, why Punjabis go to Canada. Maybe I need to watch this one. We watched the Nitish Rajput video on the Khalistan movement, and we watched another channel I can't quite remember on the Khalistan issues in Canada. Okay, well let's watch this.
Canada is being colonized. To set the stage for this conversation, we need to define what colonialism is. For our purposes, colonialism is the policy or practice of acquiring full or partial political control over another country, occupying it with settlers, and exploiting it economically.
I just think it's ironic. Well, it's not ironic. Anybody can be a colonizer. It's okay.
There are two countries
I was going to say
and a global
something, but
organization
we'll wait.
I'd like to apply this concept to: China, India, and the WEF. In order for us to say that we are being colonized by any of these entities, we need to apply all three parts of the definition. First, the occupation of settlers. Second, the economic exploitation of the country. And third, and I would say most important, the acquisition of full or partial political control. Starting with China, it is no secret that there are thousands of Chinese immigrants coming to the country every year.
Yeah, this is also, so there's a lot of Chinese immigrants in the US as well. I again, I don't necessarily see the immigrants as an issue. I would say when it comes to like China, what a lot of the Chinese people, the Chinese immigrants are doing, or not even necessarily immigrants, they're coming over and buying a lot of land. They're buying a lot of buildings, and thus like raising the they're pricing out a lot of areas, right? They're buying up just huge swaths of open land, and that that's what a lot of people tend to see a lot of fault in, and that's a hard thing to say. It's like, okay, oh, these people are immigrating here and they're buying all this stuff up. Is that bad? If they're immigrating and becoming citizens, then is that a bad thing? No, of course not. But if they're just here on like a visa and they're buying up all this land and stuff, all these buildings, is that a bad thing? I don't know. Could be, could not be. I mean, our country, our citizens can do the same thing in other countries as well. So again, it's a tough situation. I don't even know if he's necessarily going to talk about that, but yeah, we'll just let him get back to his point.
2022, China was Canada's second largest contributor of immigrants, with over 30,000 entering the country that year. Many of the Chinese immigrants coming to Canada are Fu Ardai, basically the second generation rich, and these people generally come here with a lot of wealth and they're able to exploit our country. One of the ways rich Chinese people are doing this is through buying up real estate.
Okay, so it is exactly what I was saying. One third of Vancouver's real estate market is owned by Chinese buyers. Wow, I had no idea. Chinese home buyers accounted for nearly one third of Vancouver's real estate market during 2015, spending 9.6 billion of the 29 billion of total real estate sales, according to the new study by the National Bank of Canada. National Bank financial analyst Peter Rutledge, who compiled the data, said that Chinese home buyers occupied 33% of the total housing volume in Vancouver's real estate market and 14% of the purchase in Toronto, and about 6.7 billion of the 47 billion in deals. So this is in 2015 even. So this is 9 years ago.
Give you an idea of how bad it is, in 2015, one third of all homes in Vancouver were owned by Chinese buyers, something that has
Wow.
negatively contributed to the housing market in Vancouver and other parts of the country, as these people are willing to overbid by hundreds of thousands of dollars in certain cases just to
And yeah, it's because they have money in banking, and if they are like directly connected to the government, they have the governmental money as well,
own the home. This massive
like
control
he has here with Winnie the Pooh.
cases just to own the home. This massive control over the market is leading to higher prices, which is making it more difficult for Canadians to enter into the homeowner market or even just to rent. And unfortunately, we are now at a point where a lot of Canadians don't think they will ever own a home in the country they
This is the same thought process here in the U.S. as well.
were born in. Now, some of you might think this is moot because the government implemented a foreign home ownership ban in 2022, but there are a couple reasons why this isn't the case. First, the damage has already been done. Millions of Canadians have already been priced out of the markets they live in. And two, there are still exceptions and loopholes for foreign owners to buy homes in Canada. They could try to put it in the name of their
The rule, which was first announced in 2022, will now be extended until the beginning of 2027. It bans foreign nationals and commercial enterprises from buying residential properties in Canada, with exceptions for some international students, refugee claimants, and temporary workers.
children who are international students. And they could also even try to purchase it through the temporary worker exemption. China has also been at the forefront of election meddling in our country. This means that if China has had the power to influence the course of events relating to our government or public affairs in the country, by definition, they are exerting political control over our country. There are a couple examples of this in recent history involving Michael Chong and Han Dong. For those of you who don't know, Michael Chong is a conservative MP of Chinese heritage who was vocal about the human rights violations China is committing in the Xinjiang region against the Uyghur Muslim minority. In response to this,
I'm glad that there are politicians that are willing to speak out about that.
Chinese diplomat Zhao Wei allegedly gathered information to intimidate both Chong and his extended family that still lived in Hong Kong. The other alleged case involving Han Dong claims Michael Chan, a Chinese-born Canadian politician, worked with the Chinese consulate to oust Gung Tan, who was the incumbent in Don Valley North before the 2019 election. This was also a riding in the 2019 election that Han Dong, also a Chinese-born politician, would go on to win. Now let's take a look at India. In regards to India,
Hmm.
it is obvious that there are many Indians living in Canada. In recent years, India has been by far Canada's largest contributor of immigrants, with over 118,000 arriving in the
Quite a
country
bit.
in 2022, which made up more than a quarter of all immigrants for that year. And unfortunately, some of these immigrants are exploiting Canada as well. There are numerous incidences known to the Canadian
Border agency investigating links between student visa fraud and crime and gangs.
Border Services Agency of people committing visa fraud, arriving here from India on
The CBSA would not disclose details in continuing investigation, but it told the Globe and Mail that a probe into 300 students who gained study permits with fake acceptance letters from universities and colleges has so far identified 10 people involved in criminal activity in Canada. I actually learned about this in one of the Calistani videos that I watched.
student visas only to work, or worse, arriving here and becoming involved in gang activity. We've also seen Indian students coming here and abusing our food banks, posting videos online showing
Food banking Canada for students. I mean, is that abuse?
other people how to get free food.
Get free food from food bank. Hunger crisis is coming. International students. Hold on. I wouldn't say. I mean, food banks are there for everybody, right? Food banks are there for everybody.
Here and abusing our food banks, posting videos online showing other people how to get free food even though they could pay for it. And when it comes to India,
But the thing is, yes, you would prefer it to go to those in need, but food banks are for everybody. Also, the amount of food, if you looked into it, the amount of food that food banks actually throws away because they can't give it away is ludicrously high. There is a it's I've seen it from all over the place. I've lived in many different parts of the US, so I'm assuming, okay, I'm not from Canada, so I guess I don't know truly, but from my own experience here in the US, I have seen many food banks just throw their stuff away. And even here where I live in a smaller town now, like the local food banks like that are ran by like the churches, for example, they are constantly throwing truckloads and truckloads and truckloads of food away because they try to give out as much as possible throughout the week. And then it gets to the point where the food, hey, it's going to expire, right? What do? Well, they have to get rid of it, and they're just getting rid of so much, dude.
having
Anyways,
political control over Canada, there are a couple things we can point to. The first would be the death of Hardeep Singh Najjar,
yeah, okay. Hardeep Singh. This is the Kalistani guy.
which Trudeau himself claimed India was allegedly involved in. It should
Yep. He blamed the Modi government for sending. He blamed India for sending assassins to kill him, when it just ended up being a gang related incident in Canada. But he went out of his way to blame India.
not come as a surprise either that India is interfering in Canadian affairs, especially considering our former national security advisor has stated it's a real
He said the Indian government has been mucking about in Canada's affairs for quite a while now, and various governments have done a variety of things, but clearly not enough to stop them.
issue. But if you think this is all
Hmm.
conjecture and you need a concrete example, look no further than what's happening to our national anthem. There's one more entity.
Okay, I don't know about that one, because. Alright, listen. Okay, so they sung the national anthem at a sporting event in their own way. That it would be one thing if the government came out and said, "Hey, this is the new way that the national anthem's being sung," but it was at a sporting event, a hockey game, um, and they just sung the way they want to do that. The people get like celebrities all the time to come in and sing the national anthem here in the U.S. for like different sporting events, and a lot of the times they do it terribly, they do it poorly, they do it weirdly. They some people put like a country flair to it, some people put like a rap flair to it. It's like you can't. This is a nothing burger. I think saying, oh, they're singing it in a more traditional Indian music style is, yeah, no, this is a nothing burger.
There's one more entity I'd like to talk about, and that's the WEF. Obviously, the WEF isn't a country, so it'd be difficult to describe what they're doing in Canada as colonialism, but I still think it could be considered a type of pseudo-colonialism that operates in a similar fashion. After all, just because the WEF isn't a country doesn't mean that their globalist ideology wouldn't lead them to try and import millions of people into our country, embezzle funds out of the country, and strive for political influence in the House of Commons. I mean, right after Justin Trudeau gets elected, our immigration starts growing at an exponential rate. But maybe that's just a coincidence. Did you know that one of
Hmm.
Canada's largest pension investment managers is partnered with the WEF? Well, maybe that's just a coincidence too. And maybe it's just a coincidence that so many prominent Canadian politicians are connected to the WEF. Justin Trudeau is obviously well connected. Christopher Freeland sits on the board of the WEF. Melanie Joly, who is Canadian's foreign affairs minister, was named a Young Global Leader in 2016. Jagmeet Singh was also named a Young Global Leader in 2018. Even conservatives like Michelle Rumpel and Andrew Scheer were named Young Global Leaders. And it doesn't matter where you are on the political spectrum, we can all agree at this point that Canada is being flooded with millions of people that don't have any interest in being Canadian. And all this is doing is making it more difficult for actual Canadians to stay in Canada. And why would you stay? I mean, at this point, my only reason for going back is to visit family and to make as much money as possible. And again, maybe that's just my young, pessimistic outlook on things, but with the current political climate,
The Palestine flag. Okay. No comment on this.
tax levels, and increased pressure on our freedoms, unless something drastic changes, Canada is going to continue on its downward trend. However, in my opinion, nothing's going to change. People are going to be so disillusioned if Poilievre gets elected and they realize the dude is basically a liberal with fiscally conservative ideas. You might get the odd tax break, you might see a lot.
I have no idea. Other than Trudeau, I have no idea the Canadian government whatsoever. Like no insight in it whatsoever.
All repealed, but Poilievre isn't going to do anything drastic. I'm not a conservative insider, but I can almost guarantee that if Poilievre comes out against policies like mass immigration, he would lose the votes he needs from minority groups to get elected. Yet, we need someone to come out against mass immigration. We need someone who's going to actively suppress the proliferation of drugs in our country. We need someone who's going to
An act respecting online communication platforms that make new content available to persons in Canada. What?
immediately repeal fascist laws like Bill C-18 and put in safeguards that protect bodily autonomy in the event the government tries to strong-arm the public into taking experimental drugs again. And ultimately, we need someone who
What is this about experimental drugs?
strong-arm the public into taking experimental drugs again. And
Wait,
ultimately, laws like Bill
what?
C-18 and put in safeguards that protect bodily autonomy in the event the government tries to strong-arm the public into taking experimental drugs again. And
What do you mean by experimental drugs? Experimental drugs. I guess the only thing I can think of is the COVID vaccine. Is that what this is in relation to?
in the event the government tries to strong-arm
I don't know.
the public into taking experimental drugs again. And ultimately, we need someone who is finally going to put the interests of Canadians above everyone else. But before I end this video, there is one thing I want to touch on, which is that there are a lot of people in Canada and around the world that don't see what's happening in Canada as problematic. A really common talking point is that European ancestors came over here, colonized Canada, committed genocide against the Native Americans, and ultimately destroyed a lot of Native American culture. And that is true. What the Canadian government did to the Native population was terrible. In fact, if there's one thing that most people can agree upon, it's that colonization is a terrible thing. But herein lies the paradox. If people are going to stand by the perspective that past instances of colonization in our country were a bad thing, why would they now ignore what is happening in our country, or worse, champion it as something positive? I think
I mean, he does. I mean, if you put those two side by side, he does have a bit of a point there.
in most cases, the people okay with the current colonization of Canada fall into one of two categories. They're either suffering from cognitive dissonance,
Trans Muslims are everywhere. I aren't most Muslims like hyper against LGBTQ ideas?
or they're racist. And unfortunately, I think
What?
categories. They're either suffering from cognitive dissonance or they're
Campus Watch, Brock University launches segregated BIPOC study hall. A segregated Black Indigenous People of Color study hall. Wow.
racist. And unfortunately, I think a lot of these people are just racist. When I made my video on mass
You are immigrant yourself. Canada belongs to natives. It is so funny what Europeans think they are.
immigration in Canada, there were tons of comments blaming me
Bro decided to use the logic that his ancestors used for justifying the residential school system.
or my ancestors for what happened to the native population in Canada. There were some comments
Karma, Canada belongs to the native Inuits, not the white Europeans, Asian, Africans. Everyone should leave.
even saying that what is happening now is karma for what happened to the natives, and others saying
Ha 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 ha. We Indians will make Canada brown country and we will rule the whites.
that the Indians will make Canada a brown country. We have moved so far
Wow.
away from legitimate morality that people would rather be racist and support tribalistic policies that align with what side they're on than stay consistent to their core beliefs. But hey, what do I know? Apparently I'm a colonizing clown that
Canada has culture? Question mark. It all ended when you colonizers butchered the natives, clown.
butchered the natives. As always, if you feel like you have anything to add to the conversation, leave it in the comments down below. If you enjoyed the video, I'd really
Interesting.
appreciate if you could leave a like and share it with a friend. With that said,
Huh.
thanks for watching. Stay safe wherever you are in the world, and I'll catch you in the next one.
Interesting, interesting, interesting. Interesting. I don't agree with everything that he said. Some points he was okay on, but I don't know, man. It's a tough subject. It's a very tough subject to talk about, right? Okay, well, let's go ahead and read some of the comments. I'm always interested to see what the comments say in videos like this. I'm an Indian living in. Oh gosh, my voice cracked a little bit there. I am an Indian living in India. Indians are starting to leave Canada. Two of my cousins came back to India. They have Canadian PR. They're never going to give up their Canadian PR. Lol. But what is the use of giving up, not giving up, keeping up, whatever that is? Ask them if they have everyone up their PR. What does PR mean? Private residence, maybe? I don't know. I don't know what PR is. Having shelter in Canada is now a luxury. Canadians are struggling and can barely afford food and shelter here. There are tents popping up in many parks across the country. Canadians are becoming a third world country. Canada. Shelter is the biggest issue. All going to plan. Okay. India is officially going to include Canada as an Indian state pretty soon. Canada will become our biggest dumping ground. Not funny by see you in depressed and crime rates high. All right. Canada was colonized a while ago, just asking the people labeled today as indigenous. I know, it's almost like I talked about it in the video. For Canadians watching this, India allegedly got involved in Canadian affairs only because Canada has been meddling in Indian internal affairs for years. India has pointed it out regularly both officially and unofficially for more than a decade. We deeply dislike Trudeau for cultivating an anti-India vote bank. Vote Trudeau out and do both of our countries a favor. As an Indian Canadian, I don't agree with the part about India. Indian government couldn't care less about Canada, and that guy that was killed was a terrorist. He was also killed by gang members. He wasn't killed. He wasn't sent. A hitman wasn't sent by Canada to or India to kill him. It was like local gangs. A colony getting colonized. Sad. This YouTuber is also sad seeing people's double standards. Hope you watch the full video. They colonized by Britain. Now India is nothing changed by colony. Canadians were British, so you can't colonize yourself. Everything has changed. What? Canadians were French. That's what Indians, North Americans have been saying since the 1500s. How does it feel? Maybe make a treaty that they don't pay. Lol. Okay. Haha, color is returning to the land. Wow. I said this to people 10 years ago and was labeled a racist for even suggesting it. We are being outpopulated by foreigners. And not random people, but selected foreigners. But Canada's already colonized by English and French people. Just read the last 300 years of Canadian history. Do you agree with my premise that colonization is a bad thing? If so, should we allow colonization to happen again? Then redeem your sin first. Criminals talk about crime prevention. That sounds very ironic. What sins have I committed? The sin is inherited. Oh, bullshit on that one. Better you have self awareness. Bullshit on inheritance of sin. That's bullshit. I completely disagree with this person right here about saying sin is inherited. I'm not even going to read that conversation anymore. Um, it was colonized by the Brits and French hundreds of years ago. As someone else stated, Canada is the world's refugee encampment. Okay. Rip Canada. Isn't Canada already a French English colony anyway? Question mark. No, you're living in the 1700s? Question mark. Of course, I know English Canada today has almost no identity to speak of apart from saying how different from Americans they they think they are. The Quebecs and Acadians have at least evolved their own culture, which is now quite different from the modern day France. Okay. But Canada itself is a neo-colonial country, having colonized its First Nation, French Canadians, and Quebec. The worm is in the apple, and as a Quebecer, I want out. You want to leave Canada? Interesting. Where would you go? Back to France? Would they accept you? Trudeau's old stock of Canadian speech was very telling. We saw this all coming decades ago in Vancouver. Greed and indifference did us in, but we had nice hair. We had nice hair. Is that why people voted for Trudeau? Because he had nice hair? Am I reading this 500 years too late? Question mark. It's always obvious when people don't make it in the 6 minute mark. You must be parroting your abilities. That makes. Oh God, I'm assuming that was a sex joke. That makes no sense, but thanks for the free engagement. Makes me more money. All the best. All the best. Inviting millions of fanatic Punjabi Khalistanis so as to use them as an asset against India by Canadian woke government makes complete sense to you, bro? Question mark. You invite turban Khalistani, you become Khalistan, meaning Khalistan and empty land. The PPC is the only party that has said it would limit immigration and start putting Canada first. The communist Trudeau, communist global fascist, and a man of many hats. Why more MPs are Indian? Most don't speak English or French. Don't limit yourself to blaming him. That's easy to lead. Okay. All right. Let's look at some of the new comments. I'm going to assume these comments are going to be spicy, man. A violent settler to legal immigrant. Leave this land isn't yours. You're colonizing it. Peak irony. You mean getting colonized again, once again after the whites stole it from the natives. Assimilation and integration could work, but not ghettoization and separatism. Wokeism is embarrassing. There must be a better way of creating some kind of cohesion that could work. And there are limits as to the number of people that can be accommodated. It is all about balance. I fear the government is our kilter. An adjustment of our policy is called for. Pessimism also should be challenged. There are many positives that could work on for common good, all in Canada. Good luck to you all. Why an Indian becomes manager in our company, he or she will hire lots of Indians. There are no equal job opportunities. That's not true. You don't know that. You don't know that. All companies should strive to hire the best. If you're not hiring the best, then your company's going to fail. Um, okay. What makes someone Canadian? Being born in Canada. Okay, if being born in Canada makes you Canadian, then what about the children of the immigrants? Are they're Canadian then, right at that point, right? And they will define the culture going forward in the future. Hmm. Colonization is something that happens through force and violence. I think comparing what is happening in Canada right now to colonization is a stretch. The immigrants are being allowed into the country and they're being allowed to do everything that they do. Colonization was something that happened through force and violence. It's not a strong argument to make that involves violence and force just because that's how it was done hundreds of years ago. Tactics change. War isn't fought in bunkers and with pilots in planes shooting pistols anymore. Also, the definition makes zero reference to force and violence. If you disagree with the definition, that's your issue to take it up with yourself. Why Canadians let Indians insult their anthem? Okay, so that part where they're singing the national anthem, that's ludicrous. That's a nothing burger. Anyways, it's better to have Hindus hardworking and nice than the Muslims. Oh my God. Globalist policies were already in place decades before the WF started to become a controversy. The many driving factors and investors in NGOs, WEF is just a haughty social club. Every country in the West will eventually become another India. At least they're not radical Muslims. Be grateful. Is this guy Jewish? Question mark. Why does that matter? Suppose a guy is involved in bombing of a Canadian flight and now is living in India. Canada government repeatedly asked Indian government to send him back, but India does nothing. So this is referencing the Khalistani movement. Okay. All right, send the immigrants home. That person says immigrants aren't the problem. The problem is that half the immigrants are from only two countries, India and China. Nope, only India. Chinese won't come to here anymore. Hmm. Leave your BS at home. Be a good Canadian and not a good woghead. I don't know. Even here in Brazil, the Indians' reputation is bad. What? Why? Last time I checked, Canada's colonization was undertaken several hundred years ago. Oh, okay. The presenter has forgotten the bombing of Air India plane, which took flight from Canada, and then the Canadian government tried to best to protect those who were involved in this bombing act. Canada government is the most racist government in the world. I don't know about that, but they were bad when it came to the Khalistani movement. All whites are immigrants too. What do you mean? All whites are immigrants too. That's rude to make Canada a brown country. Why don't they make their own country browner? What? Okay. White nationalists are bad people. This man's families were immigrants. Canadians have tradition of giving shelter to wrong people. That's why terrorists are coming to Canada. Aren't there reports that more and more immigrants are leaving Canada? Yeah, they're leaving for the US. India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, and other Muslim countries are garbage countries. They all try to flee Western Christian countries. To flee too. What? Christian? Laugh, laugh, laugh. Mostly neoliberal order countries. This person's crazy. At this point, the People's Party of Canada is the only party trying to stop the mass immigration, which is making everything worse. Worry about the Chinese. The people taking these people will take over Canada. Yeah, the China is like China. China as a government wants to take over the world, right? If there's anything to worry about, it's that. Um, Europeans created Canada out of nothing. The natives are fortunate it was Europeans and not more ruthless empire. You think the Mongols would have given a shit? Yeah, and now Indians and Chinese are taking over. OMG, singing that anthem in Hindi is disgusting. That you're disgusting, dude. Come on. They sung it very well. What the hell? Okay. All right. The people that have an issue with them singing the national anthem in that way, that you
There's one
you
more.
can clearly tell that they love the country that they're in. All right? Including that in your argument just it ruins the argument. They obviously they very clearly have great respect for the country, that they're singing the anthem to for their country in their own way. I'm sure if they were asked to, they could sing it, in I guess in a more Canadian way. But this is not them ruining the anthem. Come on. Okay. Canada has no anti-suffering contract. Sound like an argument designed to blame. What? We will colonize Canada. Imagine openly saying this if your name attached to it and be proud to say it. Okay. I'm from the US and never been to Canada until last week. Indians are everywhere. Indians are everywhere in the US as well. Canada is becoming Hindu settler. This is what Trudeau and the KGB stormtroopers are doing. KGB. The Kremlin, the KGB, isn't KGB the Russian, like the Soviet era, like And stormtroopers are freaking German. Aren't the stormtroopers like a Nazi thing? Okay, all right. You're promoting anti China hate. Chinese immigrants are far fewer than Indians and only just ahead of Afghans, Nigerians, and Filipinos. They are also largely apolitical, with only a few using locally born Chinese involved in politics. I also challenge you to prove that Uyghurs are being genocide. Oh, this person's Chinese. The Uyghurs are being genocided in Xinjiang. You simply parrot anti-China U.S. source memes about Chinese genocides of Uyghurs. I traveled recently to Xinjiang, and I can assure you, all these U.S. allegations about Uyghurs genocide as forced labor is plain trash. No, this guy's wrong. Um, yeah, no. Free Tibet, free Hong Kong, Taiwan will stay free. And you know what? Let the Uyghurs go. Let them have Xinjiang again. And stop putting them into concentration camps. Anyways. Grayson, Grayson. He even did a video on his response to the racist comments. I don't feel like I need to watch that. Interesting. Okay, well, okay. So what my thought process is, okay, he's upset that there's a lot of immigrants coming and they're not staying true to Canadian values. Which, yeah, one could say that if you have a lot of people coming in, that they should try to adhere to the social values of the people already there. Try to stick to the norm, right? But at the same time, they should also be allowed to bring in their own values, right? That's what defines them and makes them unique. So as long as your country is allowing the people to come in, then you should expect that there would be some homogenization between the different cultures. You don't want them to suppress their culture, right? You don't want to suppress the culture of their homeland. They should at least be able to openly showcase their culture that they're proud of, as well as learning and being proud of their new Canadian culture. Let's just keep Canada as an example, right? Hmm. Okay. Interesting. What do you guys think? Let me know down below. Again, Grayson's channel and his videos will be linked in the description. I do that for every single video I react to. Um, yeah. Hmm. Interesting. Interesting. Make sure to leave a comment, guys. Like the video, and subscribe if you haven't subscribed. Interesting. Okay. Take care, everybody. Have a good one. Goodbye.